Everyone, I'm Carolyn, and I offer health and wellness information for those of you going through spiritual awakening and ascension. So today, the channel that we're going to actually talk about and the topic is guilt. Because as you know, I'm sure, having experienced it at least once in your life, guilt is a powerful emotion that humans tend to make probably bigger than it really is. And we're going to talk about that today and give you some tips and tools to take forward on your journey so that you can more effectively deal with times of guilt. And particularly during spiritual awakening, when all these emotions and all the things from the past are coming up, undone things, things you wish you would have done differently, they surface and you're going to have to deal with them. I didn't think I was going to have to. I didn't think I had anything. No, right now I'm dealing with something. And so I think guilt is the perfect topic today, probably for me, and I'm sure a lot of you. So with that, I'm going to read the channel that I received on guilt. I do want to mention that if you haven't listened to my introductory video, it tells you a lot about how I get this information. As I had mentioned, I'm very clairaudient, and I just left you a little bit of information on that introductory video. So with that, I'm going to go straight into the topic and read the channel, and then what we're going to do is we're going to actually decipher this, and bear with me here a minute. We're going to decipher the channel, and then I'm going to leave you with some tips and advice that you can actually use on your journey. So as I read through this, think about how this might offer you some assistance, and you can always go back and listen to it again. All right. Guilt is such a human emotion. We batter ourselves with it until we are so beaten down we can think of nothing else, only that we are constantly drained and in an endless loop of self-imposed suffering. Like so many misunderstood things in humankind, guilt only harms the one feeling the guilt and has no positive outcome, offering nothing for any of the parties involved. Why do we feel the pull of guilt in our lives? Where when sadness overtakes us or some turn of event, we find a way to blame ourselves. Struggling, hurting ourselves passionately, hurting ourselves over these emotions of guilt that will not go away. How can you overcome guilt? How can you set it aside? Know that in your deepest heart of hearts, yes, you feel you made mistakes. Review the mistakes you feel you made. Comfort yourself with the mistakes you made, knowing that you are a human being who can be fallible at times, and that with intent, with good intent, you did all that you could at the moment in time. Process the feeling, the knowing, but it must be let go, for guilt is a most destructive force. It is with guilt that one who has lost a loved one feels that they could have done something to change things, but it cannot be. It cannot be that you were the cause of all that occurred with that situation, that person, that time, that event. For things that happen to one cannot be controlled by another. What is under your control is the path you now choose. Know that from this experience that you have learned for your journey forward. Guilt has presented itself to you in all its finery, but know that it is not lasting, for it is not the truth of you. Okay, that's our channel for today and our information. So what I want to do is I want to go back through these, and that's the part of the process I'm going to use when we do these channels, is go back and decipher the paragraphs a bit, and then leave you with some tips and advice. And again, you're welcome to comment and ask questions at the bottom of the YouTube video. So if we look at this first paragraph, they really just talk about what guilt is. It's a human emotion. We have it. We all have it. And boy, do we use it to our disadvantage. Because ultimately, what this is saying is guilt is suffering. And we do it to ourselves over and over. We don't just think about it once and suffer. It's an endless loop, like they say. Think about it. Think about the last time you felt like you did something wrong or didn't do enough. Oh my gosh. Or you hurt someone and you haven't made amends. Oh, that guilt. It just keeps going and churning and churning and churning. So again, endless loop of suffering. Guilt is suffering. Anyway, and we'll talk a little bit about what that feels like, because I know we've all experienced guilt before. So again, they go on to say that so much is misunderstood with respect to guilt, and just in humankind in general, that essentially we oftentimes will think that guilt is useful, that we're in this process of beating ourselves up because we deserve it and we should be punished. this whole punishment thing. But all that does is make things worse for you. There's no positive outcome. There's no joy. There's no laughter. There's no moving forward. You are stuck in the past. And you are just constantly in this loop of suffering just for yourself. Nobody else is suffering. It's you. You're suffering. You're doing it to yourself. I've done it a lot. I'm doing it right now. And that's why I picked this channel to do today for you, because I think it's really powerful and impactful. And like I said previously, it's really powerful as you're going through spiritual awakening, because a lot of spiritual awakening is about emotion and bringing emotion to the surface and bringing situations to the surface and that feelings you have with yourself and releasing those to let them go so that you can move forward and keep ascending and keep raising your vibration. So again, it's worth working through these guilt situations. All right, as we move through this channel, it talks about how do you get past this? Because you're continually, as they say, passionately hurting yourself over these emotions of guilt that won't go away. Things you think you didn't do right. Things you wish you could have done differently. Turn back the hands of time, okay? So what they're saying here, and I have found this profoundly useful, rather than going into this endless loop of what I did wrong, or what I thought I did wrong, what I didn't do, expand past that and actually sit with it. Sit with, what did you think you did wrong? What was the mistake you made? Because we do all make mistakes, and that's part of life, and it's part of learning, and that's why we're here. So sit with yourself and step outside of yourself. Look inside at that situation. Think about what it was. Articulate that to yourself. Journal. Journaling's great. Actually writing, not typing, writing does something different for you. Write out what that mistake you think was, what caused that guilt. And then think about it. Consider the alternatives. What could you have done differently? Well, you're going to find most oftentimes, again, you're not in control of everyone or that other person that was involved or the other people that were involved. They had choices too. Their soul had choices too. There were plans in place for them to carry out certain things, for you to carry out certain things that we just aren't consciously aware of. And that during the awakening, we become much more consciously aware of if we sit down and work and deal with some of these situations that actually come up. Don't stuff them away like so many times we do in our human lives. So again, sit, review what you think you've done. Again, don't punish yourself. Just consider it from an outside perspective. Look at it kind of intellectually, not emotionally, all right, at this point. And then know that, what else would you have done differently? I mean, given the circumstances of that moment, didn't you really ultimately do all you could? Or did the right thing for that time with the information that you have? Or for that time in your life? When we're really young, we're learning and we really can make some big mistakes, and what I call mistakes, okay? Or what we call mistakes. And particularly in love, those kinds of situations. They can be disturbing to us as we move forward in life and how we handled ourselves. And sometimes we don't get past that. We continue to make those same, I'm just going to use mistakes because that's what we say. But again, are they really mistakes, or are they the kinds of things where we're supposed to learn, understand, move forward, process, and then change the way we behave, or what we might do differently, or accept the fact that with what we had at that time, that was what we were supposed to do, and that was the best thing we could do. And I'm going to give you an example from myself that was extremely profound. And I hadn't felt horrible guilt like this for years. When my dear friend passed away from brain cancer, who had been living with me, he actually went home the last 2 weeks, back to his house by himself the last 2 weeks. Of course, we didn't know he was dying at that time, but he moved out. And we'd been fighting this for 10 months together. I didn't understand what was going on or why. And yet he was a very private person as well. We moved him home, got him settled, and that's the last I heard from him. And he passed away 2 weeks later. I was devastated. He passed away alone. He wanted to be alone. I finally realized it wasn't that I wasn't there for him, that I wasn't at hospice for him when he passed away, that he needed someone to be there. Through a long series of situations and introspection and sitting and processing and then listening to my higher self, I realized that this is what he wanted. He didn't want to leave me with the memory of him passing away in my home. I think he really knew intuitively that he was dying. I didn't at the time, because we were on a stage where that just didn't seem like that was that likely right away. But with brain cancer, it can be very difficult. But anyway, he made the choice to go home and be alone. He wanted to be alone. He was very private. Even some things for people like that are private, regardless of how close you are. So I moved through my guilt, which was devastating to me, over the course of about 2 months. And I did it through not ignoring it. And I was doing the endless loop of suffering to myself. But then I processed it with other people. I spoke it out. I went to a counselor. I spoke to friends. I processed it myself and meditated on it. Again, you do not want to live with this guilt all your life. So again, find a way to process it, move it forward. This is what they're saying, and get on with it. And what I realized is, oh my gosh, I had done everything I could. What was I going to do? Stop him from leaving this house and so that he could pass away here and be, feeling very uncomfortable about that? No. Everything worked out the way it should have. But I sure didn't know that when it happened. So again, think about that as you move forward. And then lastly, guilt is there, but it's not who we are. It's something that I think our ego self does to us, and that pain of that loss does to us. And, we can move past and beyond that, and learn from it. Life's about learning. This journey certainly is about learning. And even if this, like in my example, it's a person who passed away, right? It was a loved one who passed away. If your loved one or the person that you feel guilty over with the situation is still here in humankind, you have actions you can take. Possibly it's one of you forgiving them, because lots of times if you haven't forgiven somebody, guess what? You end up with guilt, which I know sounds strange, but think about it. You end up with guilt. And so, because you're thinking, oh, what could I have done differently? And this is kind of lots of times in some really difficult relationships. What could I have done differently to not have caused that to happen to me? So that's guilt. If you can offer forgiveness, guess what? Guilt's going to come along too and go away. The other part is reach out to that person. I mean, this is the time during ascension and spiritual awakening where cleansing these kinds of things are really important. If you feel that helping you through this guilt situation, by reaching out to that person, writing a letter, clearing the air, do it. Do it. So many times in our lives, we do not address the things in the manner we should. And take the high road, go do it, and do it for the right reasons. Not just, oh, it's going to make me feel better. Do it because it's about taking us all forward. Lighter, higher vibration, allowing you to move to where you need to, and taking the rest of humankind with it too, because you're also going to impact that person as well. So I hope I've left you with something to take away. I think the number one takeaway here is, first of all, forgive yourself. Guilt's tied to forgiveness. And process it. All right? Process it. Take it, even though it's uncomfortable, and sit with it. Walk through it. Move through it. And feel lighter, regardless of how you end up dealing with it as a result. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. Like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time.